Sarah Fiddler and her 9-year-old son are going to a cinema after being dropped off by her husband Brad. Once out of the cinema, Sarah and her son decide to take a taxi to return home as instructed by her husband, but as they are being driven home, Sarah notices the cab has missed the exit and requests the driver to pull over. But the driver has other ideas in his mind and keeps on driving. Sarah even tries to contact her husband, but she's unable to reach him. Sarah begs the cab driver to let them go, but he doesn't reply with a single word and pulls up to an isolated house in the middle of nowhere. The man drags Sarah inside the house, leaving the little kid by himself in the car. As he sits there confused and scared, the boy hears his mother screaming. A few moments later, the man comes out to drag the little kid inside the house as well. With tears in his eyes, the kid asks the man where his mother is, but the driver responds by saying that she's never coming back again. This mysterious man is Bob, but he's not an ordinary cab driver. He's a psychopathic serial killer who stalks women in the city street, and if he has the chance, he kidnaps them. He then takes them to his remote house, assaults them physically, and finally murders them. Bob plans to keep the boy as his slave who will be cleaning his house, serving him, and will be helping him bury the dead bodies in the cellar. To make things easier for him, Bob names the kid Rabbit and orders him to do everything he's asked to do. He then explains that Rabbit needs to open the door within 10 seconds of hearing the buzzer, because that's when Bob will be home with a new victim. He tells Rabbit that he will need to find the stories of missing people in the newspaper and paste them neatly in the scrapbook. The man also warns the boy to never betray him by trying to run or steal from him. When Bob leaves for work one day, Rabbit finds a missing report about him and his mother in a newspaper. This motivates him to try and escape from Bob's captivity through the attic of the house. But as soon as he gets out, he finds Bob waiting for him outside. In a state of panic, Rabbit screams his lungs out in hopes of getting somebody's attention, but there's not a single soul to hear his cry. Having no options left, the boy starts to descend, while Bob starts throwing rocks at him. Eventually, Rabbit gets hit by the rocks and collapses on the ground. The boy is no longer free, even within the house, as he's chained up and under surveillance at all times. The same series of events continues for years as Bob brings in women of all sorts, molests them, and finally kills them. And when he's done, Rabbit is left to clean the mess up and help him bury the bodies. One day, Bob picks up a young man and his father from a city location. The father appears to be pissed off at the young man and berates him for being incompetent all his life. Hearing this, Bob gets flashback visions of his own childhood where we learn that his father used to abuse him a lot. Later that day, Bob returns back to his house where a teenage Rabbit is waiting for him. While still holding the boy captive, Bob tries to become more of a father figure to him and tries to teach him about human anatomy. However, Rabbit immediately makes it clear to Bob that he won't kill anyone, which angers Bob. To convince Rabbit that nobody else cares for him, Bob reveals that his father, Brad, has remarried. So by bringing Rabbit closer, Bob intends to turn Rabbit into a serial killer like him. He then leaves Rabbit to study the human anatomy books by himself. As days pass by, we see Rabbit studying the human anatomy book, while Bob asks him questions from time to check if he's learning anything. One day, one of Bob's victims manages to get out of his torture room and into the hall, where Rabbit is resting. Covered in blood, the woman begs Rabbit to help her get out, but Rabbit stays quiet the whole time, and she's eventually killed by Bob. Bob forces Rabbit to play a game with him, where they guess the details of Bob's previous victims. As it turns out, Rabbit knows everything about the victims, as Bob forces him to frequently read stories about them. While Rabbit is cleaning the mess that night, he hears Bob crying in his sleep. Through a flashback scene, it's revealed that Bob's father used to force him to sleep with his own mother, which left him with a deep mental scar for the rest of his life. The next day, Bob brings in a hooker named Mary for Rabbit to have fun with, but she's drunk as a skunk and has no idea what's going on. Mary simply thinks that she's here for a good time. However, her drunk behavior starts to irritate Bob. So, he cuts open Mary's neck to demonstrate the cardioid artery that made her die instantly. Rabbit is then ordered to bury the girl, as he leaves behind a pack of cigarettes on her grave. And that night, Rabbit starts screaming in his sleep as a result of his nightmares. To complete Rabbit's transformation into a serial killer, Bob asks him to pick a victim from a yearbook. Rabbit initially refuses and throws the book on the ground, but Bob forces him to pick up the yearbook and warns him not to make any sound at night ever again. Before leaving, he also releases Rabbit from his chains. The next day, Bob is seen watching the news on the television while Rabbit fills the scrapbook with pictures of his victims. Bob reveals that the police still have no clue about him, even though the number of missing women is increasing day by day. Out of nowhere, Rabbit asks Bob why he murders and rapes women, but he doesn't get a clear answer from the psychopath. As Rabbit keeps on pressing Bob for an answer, he loses his cool and screams that his victims are all whores, which is obviously not true. Now, Bob is convinced that Rabbit needs to get laid, otherwise he'll keep on asking stupid questions. Bob once again asks him to pick a girl from the yearbook. Even this time, Rabbit is reluctant to choose, but after a bit of encouragement from Bob, he points to a girl named Angie. Before we know it, Bob manages to abduct her and bring her home, leaving Rabbit and Angie in a room. But when he returns back, he realizes that Rabbit has still done nothing and starts consoling the boy that everyone is nervous on their first time. As encouragement, he also promises Rabbit to let him out if he proves himself by killing the girl. Meanwhile, Angie is sitting in the corner of the room scared for her life. Before leaving the two of them together once again, Bob warns Rabbit that he will kill her if Rabbit doesn't. But Rabbit is no killer, so he starts to bond with Angie while Bob watches television outside. Angie even agrees to sleep with Rabbit in hopes of getting out. But Rabbit rejects her offer and says that they can't get out no matter what. Still, Angie forces herself onto Rabbit, hoping to stay alive. But just when Bob barges in, Rabbit stabs her in the stomach. He then drags her body into the room containing the corpses of previous victims. When Rabbit returns back, he comes up to Bob and asks for another girl. Proud of his supposed disciple, Bob agrees to hunt another girl for him. The next day, Bob offers Rabbit a new pair of clothes and allows him to clean himself. He also brings in a new chair for him so that he can sit beside him. Not just that, Bob plans to take Rabbit with him so he can manually choose his next victim. It's been years since Rabbit has seen the light outside and is filled with nostalgia when he sees the cab in which he and his mother were brought in. Bob brings Rabbit to the city in his cab, and on the way, he suggests several victims of all ages and types, but Rabbit declines them all. Bob thinks it's too much for Rabbit for the first time and decides to drive back home. Bob even reveals that he recorded a video of Rabbit and Angie that night, but hasn't watched it yet. Hearing this, Rabbit starts panicking and argues with Bob that it's his private thing and he should not watch it. As they drive together, Bob eventually discovers that Rabbit has written the word help on the side of the cab for others to find out. Furious with this, Bob lands a punch across Rabbit's face and quickly gets out of the car to clean his plea for help. On the way back home, Bob realizes that Rabbit has not killed Angie. In reality, Rabbit stabbed Angie in a non-lethal spot using his anatomy knowledge and instructed her to stay still so that Bob will think she's dead. However, she still needs medical attention, otherwise her wounds will kill her in 2 days. Before leaving Angie behind, Rabbit even left her with a sharp object so that she can use it later. Soon, Bob arrives back home with an unconscious Rabbit. Even though Rabbit is knocked out and can't hear anything, Bob berates the kid for lying to him and goes to the room where Angie is hiding to kill him. When Rabbit wakes up, he takes a weapon with him and quickly rushes inside the house to save Angie. While he goes inside the house to save the girl, Angie has managed to cut Bob's Achilles tendon, and as a result, a fight ensues between Bob and Rabbit, even though Bob already managed to stab the girl. At first, Bob manages to gain the upper hand and knocks down the teenager, but soon, Rabbit holds Bob from behind and stabs him in the neck with his own knife, eventually killing the psychopath. He then rescues Angie, who is fortunately still alive, and buries Bob next to his victims. With Bob dead, Rabbit tracks down his father Brad and goes to visit him in his house. It's Christmas time, and Brad now lives with his new wife Marie and Rabbit's half-brother Colin. Brad doesn't recognize Rabbit at first, but when he starts mentioning the events of his childhood, Brad pretends to be delighted about his survival and reveals that Rabbit's real name is Tim. Brad hugs and welcomes Tim into his home, but Tim has a strange look on his face, as if he's not happy with meeting his father after so many years. In a surprising turn of events, Tim confronts him with the fact that Brad had arranged the abduction of him and his mother. Through a letter he found, Tim discovered that the psychopath who killed his mother and captured him all these years is none other than Brad's brother. Many years ago, it was Brad who urged Sarah to take a taxi on the day of the kidnapping, as he wanted to get rid of his wife Sarah and his son. Brad immediately denies all of this, along with Marie, who insists that Brad doesn't even have a brother. Amidst the argument, Brad tells his wife and his son Colin to go upstairs while he settles the matter with Tim. When Tim threatens to tell everyone his secret, Brad tells him to get out by physically assaulting him. When Marie realizes that her husband is a murderer, she quickly rushes down to intervene, but he starts assaulting Marie as well until Tim hits him on the head. A struggle ensues between the father and the son, and Tim eventually beats him to death. Realizing what just happened, Marie stages a crime scene as though a burglary has just happened and orders her son Colin to stay inside. She then urges Tim to leave immediately and calls the police and says that a burglar killed her husband. And as the movie comes to an end, Tim returns to Bob's house and shuts the garage door behind him. If you liked this video, make sure to hit the like button as it helps the channel tremendously. We'll be back with another video like this, but until then, take care and goodbye.